Hi, everybody. Hello.
Welcome, mischief makers.
Yeah, thank you for having us. Thank you so much. We're really excited to be here and to be able to speak to you guys on, well, your kid wants to cosplay.
Yeah.
All right. Should we just take it away?
Yeah, let's do this.
Oh, all right. Um, well, first, hi, we're Mischief Makers. We're located in the east end of Toronto, around up the upper beaches. And what we do here is we are a creative hub.
My name is Alex. This is Jenna beside me. We run a little maker space out in the east end of Toronto called Mischief Makers. We are all about DIY and recycling. It's not the only stuff that we do, but it is one of our big values here, being able to reuse materials and products in all the cool stuff that we teach people how to make.
Yeah. And we teach a lot of cool stuff.
We do.
We're going to show you some of those cool things.
Yeah. So this panel obviously is geared towards being able to teach kids how to cosplay. We also do a lot of adult programming here as well. But today we're going to be focusing on kids. So maybe you are a parent, maybe you are a teacher, maybe you are the neighborhood cool aunt who cosplays. Maybe, I don't know, you're just walking down the street and people are like, oh, that's cool. What's that all about? And you just want to be able to better explain and how to start and access this excellent hobby.
So this is us. We just gave you our intro. Some of the things that we'll be covering is benefits that your kids will have if they wanted to start cosplaying or cosplay with you even, how to prep and plan the costume making process, different tools and materials that you can use, and then sourcing your materials and costume pieces. Benefits for cosplay. I think everyone understands the benefits. Like it provides almost this incredible community bonding and parent-child bonding as well. You get your kids to start developing hard skills and practice those soft skills that seem to have kind of like what we've noticed, especially over the pandemic, is a lot of kids using their hands and just dexterity in general is behind. They're definitely very behind on that.
Yeah, and a lot of schools have been kind of phasing out a lot of art programs for elementary and middle schools just because they're a little more expensive to run, which also means that they have less opportunities to work those hands and make them strong and be a little more dexterous. So different hobbies like cosplay, like sewing, like any kind of making are always really crucial. So building those hard skills, whether that's sewing, whether that's simple things like learning how to cut stuff, pattern drafting, and being able to identify and break down those patterns is fantastic. Learning how to build things, learning how to design things, all fantastic hard skills. But also cosplay is so much about the soft skills too. So problem solving, communication between you and the person who's making the costume.
Time management.
Time management is huge.
So important.
Oh my God, and that's still a thing that I'm working on. But like, honestly, I can't say that cosplay hasn't helped me with that as much as it's in progress.
I mean, if you have a deadline for a convention or even Halloween, for example, you actually have a hard deadline, and that can make it a little bit easier to work on the time management. So there's so many. I mean, everybody who's probably watching has cosplayed or put a costume on before, and
if you haven't, I mean, like a lot of this advice is just as good for the adults out in the audience who are like, I want to do this for me.
Yeah. And
so other soft skills that are super, super important are those critical thinking parts.
Changing their mind the day of. That's also
Oh
my goodness. We do have one student who almost every time they come in, either to cosplay club or when we were doing cosplay camp in the summertime, they were like, oh, I want to do this from One Punch. Now I want to do this thing from Valorant. I want to do and yes.
Great kid. Did some amazing stuff in
Yeah.
the end. But because we learned that lesson along the way, but because we were changing our mind all the time and starting stuff, then we didn't end up getting them maybe to the level of polish that they wanted. But even so, they still made some really impressive stuff.
So they still get to see a product that they're producing, and also learning that switching midway through probably not the best idea. So but yeah.
And our last bit on there is the bonding time. So we're going to kind of get into that a little bit, but especially as a parent or a teacher or whatever kind of guardian you are to a young one who wants to learn how to make stuff, it's a great time to bond and get to know them.
Yeah, like we have developed such great relationships with a lot of our students who come here simply based off of cosplay. We like one of our students was like, I have found my people. They came to cosplay camp. They were building a hunter weapon. And just to see them like explode out this personality that was hidden for so long, being able to talk about their love of musical theater and anime, like, and now they're a volunteer for us. So like we really love to foster that sense of community and being able to be your true self here. And I feel like cosplay was for us one of those opportunities that we could really delve into who we are as people too, but also being able to be somebody else. So bonding with your parent is also one of those things, because we live such busy lives right now. We get it. You're busy, very little time, but it's such a great opportunity to just like get creative with your kids and even just for yourself too.
Absolutely. So basically, I mean, if you've cosplayed before, you kind of know what's happens in terms of the planning of the costumes. So like, I love the part of planning. It's one of my favorite parts of cosplay, where you're getting all excited for the thing. You're hunting down your reference pictures. You're getting pictures of the thing from every angle. You're chronicling, okay, I need to make boots for this. I need to make pants for this. It's going to need belts. It's going to need this. It's going to need that. I might need to do webbing for the armor and that sort of stuff. Like that part, love that. And I'm sure that a lot of us are aware of that sort of stuff, looking into our own personal collections of materials and maybe thinking what we might need to buy, what we might need to make, what we might be able to modify or even recycle and upcycle. I know for a long time, when I started cosplay, a lot of the props and stuff that I made were I would go to the dollar store and just find something that was even just vaguely the shape of the prop that I needed, and then just like think of in that abstract, break things apart, put it back together, and then build it. And like I'd have a pretty decent looking prop at the end of the day that maybe cost me $20 in materials tops. But that being said, with that being just the core of creating a cosplay in general, we're going to touch on a little bit of that, but what we're going to focus on more is managing expectations and I'm going next. Our prep and planning. So cosplay with kids, it's all about managing expectations and motivation. So we do need to think about like the actual tactile parts of breaking down a costume, but we also need to be thinking about not just our energy, but also their energy, their attention span, and their skills.
All right. Managing those expectations. Kids have big eyes and big dreams. Trust me, I am guilty of this.
Oh yeah. In our space, Jenna's, I mean, like, I like to think that I get
you do
dreamy.
You do.
I
you
have my moments,
but you also are the you are the executor and the I don't mean to mean that in such a
that sounds grim.
I know
Jenna always has the huge big ideas and dreams of what we're going to do with our space and with our program and that stuff. And then I guess in that case, I guess I get to be the fun, responsible parent who's like, okay, I love that, but we got to think about how much time do we have?
Yeah.
What are our funds like? What are we physically able to do? How much energy do we have?
That's a big one, because even kids, they see right now they're inundated with social media constantly and seeing perfection. Like I'm sure the cosplayer that they're seeing, they also don't think that they've got a perfect costume, but these kids are seeing these beautiful pieces and going, I want that. So they're like, they don't know the in-between of everything that's going to take place to get them from point A to point B. They just see stars and beauty and this cool
and even if they have an idea of how to do it, like I mean, I fall for this so many times too, where I'm watching a how-to video and the how-to video is like a minute long and like has been cut so seamlessly that I'm like, oh, that's going to be so easy. But really, I have no idea how much time and energy that's actually going to take. And with kids, it's taking that to the extreme. So that's always a big thing to think of. So some considerations that we want to keep in mind when we are helping manage the expectations of our little cosplayer is we want to carefully consider what can be made. So I do a lot of freelance, and when I'm doing that, don't often necessarily say this to my client, but I'll always keep in mind that there's three ways that this can get done. It can get done fast, it can get done easy, and it can get done cheap. Realistically, you get two of those. If we're doing it fast, it ain't going to be good. Sorry, it was good, not easy. If we're doing it cheap and good, it's not going to be fast, etc., etc. So that one's a good one to keep in mind. And I'd say, I don't know, I've passed that along to some of our kids before while we've been doing stuff. Another thing to keep in mind is our time, our effort, and our money. Can we break down our costume into stages of done, of what could be considered done? So maybe your kid wants to be Link and they want to have like the end game armor and the whole outfit, and like they love the giant sword, they love the shield, they love the leather armor and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, step one would be, if you have the tunic, if you have the pants, hey, you're Link.
Yeah.
Like that could in itself be considered a done costume, and then adding the armor, adding the sword, adding the shield can all be stages of done, almost like a new game plus kind of thing. So we aim for the 1.0, and we can always build off of that in the future. Do you want to go for our next one?
Yep. So sit down with your kid at this point, because you're going to want to probably work alongside them, and lay down those expectations together, work on that together, because if they can contribute those ideas, it's like when we go over our rules with our students here, our rules and expectations, we ask them, what do you think our rules are? And they feel more included in the process of developing rules and expectations with us. So in this process, I would say, ask them, what do you think you can tackle on your own? Which parts of these costumes are manageable for you? Now, this may change, obviously, because trust us, when we ask our kids to cut things that we think are really simple, the amount of groaning we hear is, whew, seriously.
Just for cutting paper patterns.
Oh my gosh.
It's a lot more effort for them, and we're still kind of adjusting to that level of hand strength and dexterity that they have.
Yeah. And if this is the first time your kid is going to be building a costume, you might not know the hurdles that you'll face. So ask them what it is that they think they can handle. Then work together on things you can work on together. And then it's going to have to be what you will have to probably manage and take care of. Now, if your kid is like, I can probably do most of this alongside and a lot of it with you, great, that's wonderful. But trust us, that's not the reality. And then you want to talk about the materials that you're going to be using for this cosplay. Can you use recycled material? Do you already have things? Get the kids to basically do a scavenger hunt around the house for objects and recycled material that could be used for the cosplay.
So I did see a comment here in our chat talking about whether people can buy their costume stuff and still be a cosplayer. I know that's a larger cosplay culture thing, but yes, absolutely. You can totally buy costumes. Another fun thing to do, at the end of this, I've actually got a list of places where you can buy reasonably priced kids cosplays. With that in mind, I feel like you're always going to have to modify them to one level or another. And that's also totally valid. That's still practicing maker skills, whether that's learning how to take in a t-shirt or, I don't know, add armor onto the Genshin costume that you bought, because the kind of weird foamy stuff that it may have came with looks fine, but maybe doesn't quite spark joy. I don't know. But you can always upgrade those, and that's totally a valid way of cosplaying.
Mm-hmm. And I see another comment too about wig upcycling. Depending on what color it already is, we're going to touch on wigs in this presentation. But honestly, you never know when that wig will be useful, or can you add, they're called wefts, right, into it to like create the extra blue and stuff. There are lots of tutorials online about that. I have one black wig that I have used for 3 different cosplays. I used it for a Vanellope von Schweetz. I used it for a hipster Wednesday Addams. And then I can't remember what the third one was that I used it for, but I have like cut it and added to it and braided it and like I almost destroyed it. But save any of your wigs. You never know when you could even use like the color, like cut pieces of it, take it out and add it to another wig as well.
We're also going to talk wig alternatives, but we also have that saved for a little later in our presentation today.
Yeah.
Our last bit on here. So returning to what we can do for them, no matter how many tears are shed, we want to try and avoid doing the whole costume for the kid. We're going to talk about some ways to kind of build that motivation and get them involved. But like our hope in this is that we don't end up being the ones who are up until 4 a.m. the night before making the costume, and then we're grumpy the day after.
boy.
Maybe it ends up rushed or that sort of thing. Like nobody ends up happy in that situation.
Yeah.
So as other cosplayers who me can attest, it's never fun to do the all-nighter beforehand, and it's even less fun to have to finish it at the con itself. So with that in mind, with expectations, thinking of going back to considering stages of done, also thinking sometimes done is better than good, so we can kind of change our expectations. We can always upgrade things later, and just realizing and communicating early on that things aren't always going to be perfect. Things aren't going to look exactly like they do on screen for the character. And that can also open up conversations around body expectations, body inclusion, and that sort of stuff. The whole idea, I've had kids who are like, oh no, I can't cosplay this character, they're jacked. I'm like, you don't need to be stacked with huge muscles to be able to cosplay XYZ character.
Yeah.
The same way that you don't need to have a certain skin color to cosplay a certain character.
Gender,
or be
you
a certain
total
gender.
gender bend the
Absolutely.
cosplay as well, which is, I've seen some very cool gender bending cosplays. It's amazing. Like people get really creative with that, and it is important to have those conversations with your kids, because again, like we're seeing kids
The Alberta mentality, I'm dying.
we know, and our kids are very open with us about what they're experiencing in everyday life. There's they're morbid. They know so much of sort of the doom and gloom about body positivity and climate change and all that. So I would encourage, it is okay to have those sometimes uncomfortable conversations about body positivity and like expectations of where your body's supposed to be at, and makeup, talking about wearing makeup as well, and gender stuff. It's also a great way to bond with your kid as well, being able to talk about those tough things. Like a lot of our kids are scared to talk to their parents about periods and puberty and just like, I'm not tall enough, I'm sad, like really it's so.
And yeah, I do see your comment there that the cosplay community, it reflects the rest of the real world too, right? Like there is still some elitism and aspects of racism within the community. I think as a parent, if you're not aware of the community, that does still exist in cosplay. I'd say that in the time that I've been cosplaying, it has changed immensely and has become more and more and more of an egalitarian space in that way, which isn't to say that it's perfect. Far from there. We still exist in the same capitalist society that the rest of us do. So is still that push for perfection and for everyone to look a certain way. And that can cause a lot of fun things like body dysmorphia and that sort of stuff. But within the cosplay community, there's also support and care, and a lot of other people that are going through the same thing and are there to help you out.
Yeah. And to the comment about the community as well, like causing some of those issues is like, as cosplayers, we shouldn't have to manage other people's emotions, but there's like a sense of like, be kind. Like my favorite quote by Michelle McNamara is, "It's chaos, be kind." And like we really try to get our kids to understand kindness goes so like such a long way. If someone is trying something new, if they're failing, don't be mean about it. Just understand that they are trying something new, and you should give them the encouragement to keep going. If they think they failed, just keep telling them what can you do differently, what mistakes did you make that you would change. I feel like as a cosplayer, it also is like very important that we shove that kindness and positivity like push it as much as possible, because it gets more people out to cosplay.
Totally.
And shut those assholes down that like treat other people like crap for cosplaying. I'm sorry.
Gotta keep it PG.
Do I? Oh my gosh.
But yeah,
People are mean and we don't want them around.
Van Hammer.
Yeah.
Come on. All right.
Yeah.
So
Time management.
Scheduling helps a lot. If you're somebody who likes using a day planner, I find that that's super helpful. We've recently been using an app among us for our personal projects, for our shop projects, called Notions.
It's
and that's been
amazing.
fantastic.
Yeah.
I live, because both of us have ADHD, I live through my calendar, my Google Calendar. I have a million different events and notifications and alarms and stuff just to make sure that I eat throughout the day, let alone like what stages of my projects done. But we can also apply those same things that we apply to ourselves to our kids to one degree or another. But we also need to be a little more fluid, because their energy changes, their attention span changes, and that also has its limitations. So really consider planning breaks, planning pauses from projects, and also when to bring them back together.
Because you can get project burnout very quickly, like especially if you're under a time constraint. You know, when we ran cosplay camp over the summer, they had 5 days to build one part of their costume, and the attention span of those students really ebbed and flowed. And so it was up to Alex and I to try to like, how do we manage that? We encouraged breaks a lot. Like, it's okay if you do not feel like you want to work on this and you do need to give your brain a break, go do it. But when you get that, I want to do something, I'm bored, come back to it, try it again. But keep in mind that if there's a lot of that, you may not get the costume finished. So at what point is the costume wearable? That's another thing, is like 2 stages. This is done just enough so it is wearable and acceptable. And then stage 2 is basically like, it's 100% finished product. It's like almost as perfect to the reference material that you're using. So, yeah.
So when we are scheduling these costumes, we want to think of how can they help us. So whether that's, we want to make sure that we're keeping them involved in one way or another. So we have our motivational tip number 1 here. If a kid works on a costume themselves, they're way more likely to want to wear it at the end of the day. I don't know if you've ever had the situation of, you make a costume for the kid, you work on it night and day, you finish it, you think it's amazing, and then the day comes around and they're like, I don't really feel like it anymore.
Yeah.
I've heard that story from a few parents, at least, and it sucks. It's demoralizing. It sucks so bad. But even if they've been involved in even one part of it, they're way more likely to want to see it through and keep that excitement going for that costume. So we want to think about how they can help, whether that's even just like cutting out pattern pieces, cutting out just the paper pattern, if they want to help with the painting of it, depending on where they are developmentally. We work with kids that start at age 8 and like work with kids up to age 14. So that range varies relatively drastically, but I'd say age 8 is a great end point for being able to get them involved. Whether that is just cutting up stuff or like, I don't know, actually doing a little more of the crafting. Maybe if there's a mask involved, you and them together, we're going to tackle that mask. We can cover from the neck down, fashion, sewing, all that stuff. But like maybe they have that mask portion done. We can think of how often they can help. We can think of how involved they're going to be in the making of it. One of the best advice that I'd heard from one of our parents was make an event of you guys working on this together. So we had one parent that we were talking to. We'd aside from us doing our thing here, we also consulted a few parents of kids who also cosplay or into cosplay, and fantastic idea of like every Sunday her and her daughter got together and they started working on this costume because she wanted to do X costume for Halloween.
And you'll meet, well, we're going to talk about this cosplayer in a little bit. Fantastic kid. And honestly, like her journey with this one costume that we'll talk about is really a great example of how a parent and child, the bonding, the tackling these things together, and even going through the process of it, making the mistakes, created almost like achievements of, I made a mistake, how can I fix it? And they got to creatively problem solve things together. It was this I'm really excited about. Here we go.
So this is Kara. She's one of our kids. Great
wonderful kid.
She's curious. She's so funny,
hilarious. And is a great painter and drawer.
Very creative, but she's also a bit shy at first and is kind of afraid to make mistakes sometimes. And that's not an uncommon thing at their age or even at ours. I've definitely been held back from doing XYZ thing because I don't know, I'm afraid to fail. But at the end of the day, it's us communicating that to them and to ourselves that that's a part of the process and that's how we learn to do better.
We really encourage our kids here at our space. Like, it's okay to fail. It's okay to make a mistake. If you do it intentionally, then we got problems. But just, this is your space to trial and error things and make mistakes, because you don't learn if you don't make mistakes.
So Kara was 8 here. Sorry about that. So Kara wanted to make a Nezuko costume.
Obsessed with Demon Slayer.
They'd come to one of our PA camps and we're talking about Demon Slayer. And by the end of the camp, they'd end up building her little muzzle, the little bamboo muzzle, out of a cardboard tube, some leftover craft foam that we had, some ribbon, and some paint. Looked great. Did it in an afternoon. Fantastic.
I can't believe like how much you guys achieved in just a day to do it, and it looked incredible. Like, I think Kara took it home and made one tiny adjustment to it, but other than that, like, you guys did what, it was so cool. It's really cool, and you'll be able to see it.
So Kara loves to draw and paint, but they'd never sewn before, and they were kind of overwhelmed by the prospect of making this whole costume, even though they were really, really excited for it. With that in mind, we helped find a pattern online for the kimono or the yukata. And we got her involved in cutting all those pieces. That was a lot of work for the hands of kids these days. They aren't quite as strong. They need a little bit more work to be doing. So working the scissors through all of that definitely put them through the ringer a little bit. But by the end of that, they also kind of gained an appreciation for how much goes into even just cutting patterns for this. So this was just cutting the paper pattern. Also helped tape a lot of those pieces together too, because we did one of those online patterns where you print it on like 15, 20, 50 pieces of 8.5 by 11 and then puzzle it together. Personally, not a huge fan of those. I will McCall's any day before going to those, just because I feel like it makes my life a lot easier. But definitely helps give her an appreciation of what goes into that. And her mom
through the groans, through the groans.
In terms of Demon Slayer and her getting into that costume, it ended up kind of being a great bonding experience between her and her mom Tracy too, where they started watching the show together.
Yeah, it's a family thing now. Like they all watch it together. So
Mhm.
Kara has an older sibling, older brother that also comes to our program too, and was part of our cosplay camp. And well, yeah, Ewan helped put the pieces together for the pattern
Mhm.
too. So like
Yeah.
it really became a family bonding thing. And so yeah, you're right. Like Tracy was saying that now they watch the show together.
Yeah.
Um,
And I remember she was saying at first she was kind of unsure of the show too, because like on its face, this is a anime about swords and killing stuff and violence and that sort of thing. But once you get into the show, one, heck, if it is just about that, like I don't know if 8-year-olds should be watching One Punch Man, but we do have a 8-year-old who does watch One Punch Man, and I don't know. There's some conversations that you can have
Yeah.
through that. There's some great lessons to be learned through that show, but there's also some maybe not so 8-year-old friendly stuff that you can kind of help walk them through as well, and have that sort of bonding experience for sure. So Kara further went with did fantastic job. Her mom ended up sewing together the yukata. They found a like boxer's robe
pattern.
and used that. But for the textile design, Kara did that.
Yeah. So we had her here,
Mhm.
and her and I went and we tried to like use a ruler to map out the lines in like a pencil crayon first. And then we didn't have a whole lot of time. So I explained to Tracy exactly what we're doing, and they went home, and Kara took care of the rest of it all from home. So little tiny bit of instruction here, and then was able to work on the rest of it at home.
Yeah.
And it looks fantastic. Like I, we are so proud of this kid, because
Absolutely.
that's a lot of detail to do. And that repetitive over and over and over again kind of thing can get very daunting for kids. And
Loving the support in the chat, by the way. Yeah, nice cosplay, Kara. You're killing it.
I'm so excited to be able to tell her about this on Monday. We ran into her on the weekend. We're like, hey, Kara, you're going to be featured in our thing. Oh my gosh, no way. That's so awesome.
So in terms of how the textile design was actually done, so because her yukata's pattern is so geometric, we found the pattern online. That was pretty easy enough to find because there's a bunch of different companies that are either printing out that fabric or selling the full costume. So we blew it up to the size we needed. We printed it out. We figured out with a ruler and either you could use a piece of chalk, or we used a tailor's pencil, or tailor's chalk also works well too. Just doing tons of ruler lines. We had a nice thick ruler that we could use, and we just used that as the spacing. And then once Kara got the hang of it and felt confident with it, we used the tailor's chalk kind of as our rough draft. And then we ended up just using an ultra fine tip Sharpie for a good draft. And I think it ended up turning fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, she's 8.
Yeah.
This is something.
Oh man, I think my first costume was at age 12.
Yeah.
And it was like the cringiest EGL / Norwegian goth kind of thing. Like, and oh man, it's this so much better and 4 years younger, and endlessly impressed.
And really, like Tracy having a sewing experience, Kara had been given a little tiny sewing machine for Christmas one year and was very afraid to try it out. So being able to watch her mom sew this part of the costume for her and sit there and do it together, even though Kara didn't really have a super major hand in it, that was also another bonding experience. Tracy was able to step by step kind of show how the fabric was going through the sewing machine. If maybe like I don't know, I haven't asked Tracy if like Kara did a little bit of practice with the sewing machine, but ask them to join in the process of that. Like even if it's not for an extended period of time, give them a little tiny bit of a trial with it. And if they make a mistake, that's fine. They did it.
Yeah.
Honestly, we need to give ourselves far more wins in life of like, oh my God, you got up. Yay.
Yeah.
Reward yourself with coffee. I don't know, but like we need to pat ourselves on the back a little more for just trying things.
Absolutely. Just like Piano Ninja at the I wish I made something.
Yep.
So like, yeah, do the thing. Even if it doesn't turn out perfect, that's the first step to it turning out better and
Yeah.
cooler. There we go.
There we
All
go.
right. So we're going to get into tools and materials. So in here, we're going to talk about what stuff is a little more accessible, what's kid friendly. We can kind of introduce you guys to some materials and tools and that stuff. Kind of do a little bit of an easy breakdown on all of that. So this is Ellie, also one of our kids. Great. Also 8, using a sewing machine. Fantastic. Once you teach them how to thread the machine and fill a bobbin, those are I find honestly the most complicated thing about the machine. All the different stitches and that sort of stuff, all that info can come later.
Yeah.
But just being able to do a straight line, there's so much that you can do with just that.
And you're just teaching them a simple, like they're just doing simple stitches. It's not like they're having to do any zipper stitches or anything like that. I mean, Ellie right now was making a skirt, a skater skirt, and I showed her how to do a zipper with it. It was a little more daunting, and I finished the rest of it, but at least got to see the process of how to put a zipper. But
so we've got our list here of what we think are reasonably kid accessible tools. So glue gun, super easy. Biggest thing to teach with a glue gun is don't point it at someone. It is a tool, not a weapon.
And don't touch the tip.
Scissors.
You like to put a bowl of cold water around like the kids when we use hot glue too, because they will want to experiment of like, is this really hot? So some of them get sneaky and will like start to put the hot glue on their fingers.
Sure. Any glue gun that you get at the dollar store, that's going to be a low heat glue gun. So that is going to be your best entry point. You don't need like the big DeWalt one or anything like that. You can always get longer sticks if you're finding that you're running out of them quick. I love doing a quick demo of just showing them how the glue gun works. Like there's this heater up here. You push the stick through the bottom. As it goes through the heater, then it gets pushed out the end. They usually find that pretty cool. And like after that, then you get a lot less questions of, oh, why isn't it working? Well, because it's not pushing glue into it anymore. Scissors. Kids' dexterity isn't where it used to be even 4 years ago, just both because of how the education system has changed, their reliance on text-to-speech, speech-to-text rather, but also like there's less art. They were sitting at home for 3 years, which means that they weren't necessarily using those hands the way that other people might have. So scissors can be a little bit of a hurdle, but the more they use them, the better.
And using the right scissors. Here at the shop, we have a bucket of like big scissors. That's great for cardboard, like big, thick cardboard cutting. And then we have smaller scissors for paper and getting around smaller corners and stuff. So have those two options available so you can, have those successful cutting moments. I know it sounds silly, but really, honestly, like we hear the most groans whenever we bring a project to the table of like, guys, we got some cutting to do. If you set them up for success by having the right tools, you will have less groans.
Absolutely. We do use heat guns with our kids. Same lesson as with the glue gun. This is a tool, not a weapon. Don't touch the tip. That's the big thing. We'll kind of get into how and why we use those when we get into materials a little bit. Teaching your kids how to use an iron. We do a lot of melty bead projects here as some of our like, hey, you're done your project. Here's an activity that you can pick up, a little maker activity and make a thing. But teaching them how to iron their own stuff can lead to, I don't know, maybe them doing their own laundry and their own clothes down the road. But also it's a pretty simple tool. So we're going to talk about materials a little bit, and this is going to be a little more of our focus. So whether we're using fabric, whether we're using craft foam or Eva foam, Warbla, paper mache, cardboard, faux fur, whether we're sewing or modifying something, materials are something that we can always think of. We don't always have to go for the big fancy.
Yeah. A lot of times when we are working with our cosplay kids, we try really hard to like, let's try this with cardboard first. Let's see what recycled materials. Can we use a plastic bottle? Can we make like paper clay? Actually, the pauldrons that are here, the eagle pieces, those are made out of paper clay. It's very, very light. It does crack. So I would advise to be careful about that. But you can make your very own paper clay at home with egg carton, glue, and a little bit of, elbow grease. So always source a recycled material first and encourage that. Cause like those claws, where's those claws? You can find really cool patterns online. Okay. We'll show you some cardboard pieces and recycled material pieces that Alex has built with our kids. But honestly, start with recycled material first. We are in a situation of fast fashion issues. We are wasting so much. So see what you've got at home already in terms of clothing as well. Can you modify a jacket with a couple little patches before you go to a thrift store? Leggings are really easy to find, and you probably have them on hand, sweaters and other things like that as well.
So in terms of the pictures that we have for you on the left, you'll see a progress shot of an Inosuke mask. That's paper mache. The continuation of it, it is still in progress. But yeah, there's so many mascot style costumes, or like fursuiting is becoming huge.
Yeah.
There's so many kids that are like really excited about that and wanting to do that. And buying huge amounts of the specific foam that is typically used in that isn't
wires
the most accessible financially. It can get pretty pricey.
Yeah.
So there's no reason that you can't build your base out of something as cheap and easy as paper mache, and then glue and sew your fur on top of that down the road.
Yeah, one of our students, Kiki, wanted to explore doing a partial fursuit, and Alex found a really great base, like paper craft mask. It was a barn owl, and we used that as the base for Kiki's like Cheshire Cat fursona suit. And it turned out so well, even with I think the hands too. It was just basically using like
scrap upholstery foam glued onto
dollar store
utility gloves, dollar store utility gloves, and then we did a glue of like we patterned out our glove pieces and slipped them on and glued them in place. For answering that question of how the Inosuke mask was made, so we blew up a big balloon. We did our paper mache, so we mixed water and flour together. I like to add in some salts because it helps to dry out the paper mache a little bit faster, and that means that if you go thicker, either on purpose or by accident, because it's going to dry more thoroughly. You're not going to have it like rot on you.
You are definitely team paper mache with flour. I am absolutely team like water and glue.
Oh yeah, also totally valid. I like using the flour because I find that I can make a thicker paste, so I can do heavier, harder pieces for fine work in paper mache. Water and glue and like just white glue, amazing. You can do incredible detail with that. In South America, in so many of their cathedrals and churches from like the 1700s, there are what you'd see made out of wood in European cathedrals are made out of paper mache, and they look just as good.
Yeah, it's amazing what you can do with just like flour, water, salt, or just like, yes, exactly. The art attack thing. Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes. Neil Buchanan. Love him. Yeah, it's 2 parts glue to 1 part water. And you'll know the consistency. Like it's not yogurt, but you will play around with that recipe for yourself to know what sticks and what doesn't. Because every material, so like this was donated sort of like packaging craft paper, but we've used like newsprint,
cardboard stuff that you get in Amazon packages.
Yeah,
we keep all that. We use that. That's great paper mache material.
So each of those materials will absorb differently and stick differently. So keep that in mind when you're building as well.
I love doing a kind of detail coat, I'll call it, on top of your base coat, just with tissue paper or Kleenex tissues, that sort of stuff, because it absorbs a lot of that, and you can get a nice smooth finish on that. And both the flour method or the glue method are both sandable too. So if you need something super smooth, that's totally a thing that you can do as well. On the right here, we have an Eva foam pattern that's of Majora's Mask. So this was also made by an 8-year-old. His name's Griffin.
Great
Kid rules. Very cool. So that one was a little bit of a learning curve there, but you'll see that the results are really similar. I realize that that's not a finished piece yet, but like still very cool. So we're going to move on a little bit, and we're going to talk about what sticks to what a little bit. So if you're sewing, yes, you can, like attaching fabric rather, you can use fabric glue. That is not cheating. You can sew things. That's totally fine. Hot gluing, also acceptable. And sometimes a lot more accessible for kids. We do a lot of
plushie making.
builds.
Yeah, one of our students has been making me a series of penguin plush doll. It's amazing. I have like a collection going on. But she makes these plushies with just felt and hot glue, and it's still a very effective method for your fabric.
If we are attaching Eva foam, which is also known as craft foam, they're the same thing. Hot glue is great for small details or things that maybe you're thinking it might need to move down the road. Contact cement is going to be your best friend for attaching it permanently. Working with kids, contact cement itself, a lot of fumes. If you're working in a garage with a fan, that could be fine.
But
And
still,
also wear gloves. But even then, we've started using Lepage has a low order contact cement, and we found that for most things, it's pretty good.
yeah.
We like to help limit spills and that sort of stuff. We'll put them in these kind of condiment containers. So you'll have only a little bit kind of come out to the top, instead of having to dip a brush into a giant can and maybe you spill, maybe you drip. This, I find, also limits how much air gets in here, so it'll help your contact cement last longer.
Because the you get it in a big giant jar, and there's a lot of room for air to get in. So Alex picked a couple of these up, and we have a bunch of them, and they've been like, because what we did earlier is we put the contact cement in baby food jars with paintbrush. We had spills, we had brushes destroyed, all sorts of things. But then when we went to this method, solid, choice.
For attaching plastics, you can use Warbla, because Warbla sticks to plastic like crazy. We'll kind of get into what Warbla is in a future slide down the road here. Epoxy, like a 2-part epoxy, you can get that at the dollar store. Super glue can also be good. If you're ever worried about what can stick to what, a website that I've been using for like a decade now, that I think came out while I was in university, is called thistothat.com, and it's exactly what it sounds like. So I have this material, I want to stick it to that, and it'll give you lists of what products and what kinds of adhesives will work. Fantastic. And if you need more detailed stuff, if you Google like, how do I stick paper to metal, or how do I stick plastic to glass, or whatever, you'll find your answers in a quick Google check. I have a Excel file
Legit.
that, like, has a mix, like a pretty detailed list that even will get product specific, because I get really picky with some of my adhesives sometimes, because I know
You
that, like,
do.
yeah, E6000 is probably my favorite kind of fabric glue, especially if I'm attaching any kind of jewels or rhinestones or anything to that. But
It's been really helpful. Like I always say that Alex is the go-to glue, like, adhesive person. Yeah, it's almost like you do this for a job.
Yeah.
Huh?
But in terms of accessible adhesives for kids, these would be the ones that we'd suggest the most. These are, I kind of consider the 3 horsemen of prop making, with dollar sticks as kind of the awkward fourth horseman that lags behind. So you have cardboard. If you want to make something cheap, cardboard is amazing. You can find cardboard in any recycling bin anywhere. You probably have a bunch at home.
Yep.
If you get stuff delivered in this day and age, everyone does. Very readily available.
Or go out on recycling day like we do it.
Yeah. In high school, I made like my high school mascot was a Spartan, and the 300 movie came out. So for Spirit Day or whatever it was the only time I was ever involved in any kind of big sports event at school. My friends I made for my friends a bunch of Spartan swords and shields, and it was all cardboard. They looked awesome. But yeah, cardboard, great, very accessible. If you want to do low poly designs, you could do some really, really cool stuff, and a lot of different patterns are available online. So we have this claw here that is made just from cereal box cardboard. If you check out our Instagram, our kids made a low poly rabbit for 2023, and a dragon, which are hanging in our window and look so cool.
It's super cool. Yeah,
all
it's
cardboard.
Oh yeah.
And there's tons of places online where they'll sell low poly patterns. This T-Rex head is also just made of cereal box cardboard, and the pattern came from Wintercraft.
Yeah, we get a lot of our patterns from Wintercraft. We find that they're really easy for the kids to follow. And Alex is a great way. One of the daunting things is you have all of these pieces finally cut out. There's so many. Alex likes to do this thing. It's like, guys, this is like a puzzle. Think of it as like solving a puzzle. And you have found that right away kids will go, whoa, okay, cool.
So the way that these go together, if you've never done them before, is each edge has a number printed on it, and you need to glue that edge and its tab to the corresponding number. So it's a little bit of hunt and find, the same way you do with a puzzle. I love Wintercraft because they're very well labeled. Their instructions are pretty simple, and their builds are also like reasonably simple versus finding Pepakura patterns. You get a pattern like this one might have like 60 edges that I'm putting together. I think this one had less, honestly, versus a Pepakura pattern might have like 300, and that gets, even for me, like really overwhelming. Very satisfying when it's done, but like it's really hard to keep a kid's motivation through that level of build. So I would suggest going low poly for a lot of that stuff. Looking at Craft and Eva Foam. Craft Foam and Eva Foam, the same thing. You can find it at the dollar store. You can get it in a variety of different thicknesses. Craft Foam and Eva Foam are great for things that need to be light. We have our Korok mask up here. That is made of Eva Foam. We've done armor out of Eva Foam. I got some samples here of some Korok masks that our kids did before, where you can kind of see how we've layered a little bit of them. So the blue is one layer, which is nice and thin, and the gray is another layer that is much thicker for the base. And for that, we would use contact cement. So the way contact cement works, you spread it on both surfaces, you let it dry almost completely till it's just barely tacky, and then as the contact, it is the pushing of things together that makes them stick. You can also do hot glue, but hot glue will tend to dry by the time, if it's for like small surfaces, hot glue will probably do you, but if you're doing something broad like this, then contact cement's going to be much better for you.
And the one thing about using craft foam that's really important, especially if you're going to paint it, is always put a coat of something on it. So we like to use the 2 parts glue, 1 part water method, or even Mod Podge, but you have to seal it. So always make sure, one, you use your heat gun to kind of like take your heat gun and blast it. You'll see like a shimmery side to it when you know it's done, because you're kind of closing the pores. And then you go over top of it with a water and glue mixture to seal those foam pores as well. And then acrylic paint, easy peasy.
Nice. Yeah, I would stick to acrylic paint if you're going to be working with foam. Other kinds of paint will tend to eat at it or will break a little more easily down the road. Another upside to foam is it's flexible, right? And so you need a paint that will also be flexible. So acrylic paint, is going to be your friend there. And also, acrylic paint's one of the cheaper paints that you can get a hand on. You can get like really cheap stuff at the dollar store. Does tend to be that if you spend a little more on acrylic paint, you'll get nicer paints. But depending on what you're doing, that may or may not matter. I would suggest getting craft store paint rather than dollar store paint, because I find it has more pigment, just to avoid kids getting frustrated, because if you use dollar store paint, it's still going to look fine, but you're going to have to do like 3 or 4 coats to get like solid coverage on something.
And kids don't want to be repeating painting over and over and over again.
Versus if you go to Michael's or Desairs and get even their house brand paint, like they'll be doing 2 coats instead of 4. So that'll help with that.
We've got 3 minutes left for our panel.
Cool. So we've got Warbler that we can quickly introduce you to. So that is a thermoplastic. Warbler is great if things need to be durable. Add heat to it. We do a bunch of different Warbler activities here, both for our camps, but also we do a bunch of workshops for kids and for adults using Warbler in association with cosplaysupplies.com and Warbler North America. They're fantastic. And if you ever have any questions about their stuff, tons of tutorials online, but also like they're happy to field any questions that you ever have.
So the mask in this picture that Alex is holding up is done with Warbler. Great product to use. You can use it for tons of different armor pieces and stuff.
Warbler is also great at sticking to other plastics. So if you need to combine plastic with plastic, especially the black art Warbler, it's been reformulated. So it's extra super sticky and holds really, really well with other plastics, so you can kind of use it as a joining agent in between.
Wigs.
So we said that we'd talk about figs. And when you'll wear wigs.
When will you wear wigs?
So wigs are a pain in the butt. I don't know if you've ever worn a wig for a couple hours, but it sucks. Other options that we can look into instead of wigs are things like Kool-Aid dye, doing hair chalk. Semi-permanent dyes are pretty readily available nowadays, whether it's Manic Panic or even like L'Oreal, and those brands also carry kind of semi-permanents. And if you're worried that they might be too permanent for too long, just keep them in for less time and then they'll wash out faster. But you'll still have it looking bright and saturated for the day. And if Head & Shoulders hasn't changed their formula, usually Head & Shoulders will take that stuff out really, really quickly after a few washes. Our last slide here is talking about where you can buy costumes, whether that's buying the finished costume or buying a costume to modify and kind of build off of, because that's also a great place to start. Our little blue icon up there is Facebook Marketplace. There's tons of buy and sell and trade groups. On Facebook, there's if you live in the GTA buy sell trade, GTA cosplay buy sell trade. Fantastic. Tons of people in there, lots of people kind of looking to swap costumes or trade costumes or sell one that they have, and that also goes for their wigs and accessories and that stuff too. So that's a great way to keep it on the cheap. We have all of these other lovely providers who have costumes and carry them in kid sizes. Try not to buy from Amazon. That's why I made it really, really tiny, because I think they're jerky. We hate them. The rest of these are pretty reputable, and the quality's like got better and better over the years. I remember some cheap places, it would be awful. I'd maybe avoid AliExpress and that sort of stuff, but like these, you're going to get a great costume and you'll be able to kind of build off of it and have something cool to work with. And that's about it. So I know, sorry that we had so many technical difficulties today, so we kind of run a little bit short there and had to speed run the last bit of that. But if you guys do have any questions, please reach out. We have a Discord. We're available on Instagram. We're everywhere. We try to be as everywhere as possible. Please come and visit us too. Our doors are open. If you're a maker and you're a big dreamer and you just want to just be a big kid and have fun, this is the place to do it. We're very passionate about community and helping our fellow nerds be themselves and make and create. So check out our TikTok, check out our Facebook, Instagram. Our Facebook and our Instagram are the places where we will post most of our events and
Yeah.
that sort of stuff. So if you're interested in any workshops and that sort of stuff, take a look.
Yeah.
Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
thank you, Kanji.
Thank you so much. That was a great panel. I have pinned the link to your website actually
Thank
in
you.
the Discord or the Twitch chat.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so
yes.
much.
And thank you very much, guys.
Thank you.
Even through technical difficulties. No worries. No worries.
Oh, and what was that, number 6? Technical.
It was 6.
6.
That's
yeah.
not bad.
That's gonna be our new lucky number. Thank you guys so much for having us. Thank you for tuning in. We really appreciate it. Yeah, so have a wonderful day. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday.